from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. All these famous cities and the populations around them lie in what I must call the Soviet sphere.
In March of 1946, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston Churchill, traveled to the United States, and at a small university in Missouri, Churchill gave his famous speech of the Iron Curtain, a symbolic gesture of the new form of government that was taking over Eastern Europe. In attendance at this event was the President of the United States, Harry Truman. Hi everyone, this is Mr. Trio, and today we are taking a look at the second focus point in our unit: how had the USSR gained control of Eastern Europe by 1948. As we look at this video, it is broken into two parts. The first part is the discussion of what is a sphere of influence, and then the second part will be about how the USSR took control of Eastern Europe, looking at their methods and the end result. Let's begin our discussion today by considering the universe. Many people are aware that the sun is the center of our universe and the planets evolve around it. This is essentially the same concept for a sphere of influence in a political sense. Now, a sphere such as the universe, there are ones that are very close to the sun, and then they work their way outwards. And not to put too fine a point upon it, but those spheres which are closer to the sun get more exposure to the sun and they're hotter. Those that are further away are less exposed. In a political sense, it is the same way. Let's consider Russia. Around Russia are the countries that make up the Soviet Union. This is just a small sample of the countries that were involved, but it's only for practical purposes. So we have the Soviet Union, and then around the Soviet Union is the Eastern European bloc. They include the countries of Poland, East Germany, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Romania, and Czechoslovakia. Now, the Soviet Union also wants to create a sphere around these countries. By doing so, this is essentially an area in which they are blocking off to the rest of Europe, and thus the Iron Curtain that Mr. Churchill spoke of. Now, it would be important to remember that the Soviet Union had its sphere of influence, but the United States also had its own spheres of influence. And during the Cold War, most of the conflicts that occur at this time period are when these two spheres of influence essentially blend together. Between 1947 and 1948, the Soviet Union took control of most of the countries in Eastern Europe. Now, they did it through a variety of different ways. One of the most important things to remember is that after the end of the Second World War, their military troops did not go home. So essentially, the military was already in place in many of these Eastern European countries. But they also sent secret police or infiltrated the secret police in different countries. In some cases, opposition opponents that were democratic-leaning were murdered or they disappeared. And the Soviets were also very effective in essentially creating rigged elections so the Communist Party members would win the elections and then essentially take over the government. Joseph Stalin's goal was essentially to create friendly countries in the Eastern Bloc in order to support Soviet policies and also serve as areas where they could trade goods, resources, especially agricultural goods, and provide a market for Soviet goods. The Soviets would essentially establish an organization which was known as Cominform, in which all these Eastern European countries would follow the same form of government in the Soviet Union and essentially be in alliance against the Western countries like the United States. So this is essentially a very short video, but it's a good introduction to the ideas of the spheres of influence between the United States and the Soviet Union. And it's also important to remember that it happened very quickly, and essentially the United States is going to react to this block of Soviet nations. That will be in our next unit. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk more in class.